A week on from the federal budget and the government cannot escape the anger. Small business owners continue to lash Labor over changes to taxes. They're now venting their frustrations in a wave of AI-generated memes.
Hello, I'm Linton Besser. Welcome to Media Watch. And first tonight, the federal government's plain sailing in selling easy-to-explain tax reforms that have caused barely a ripple in the media and prompted no concern whatsoever in the electorate.
Two major polls out today show there's budget backlash. More than half of those surveyed expect to be personally worse off because of this year's budget.
Labor MPs not panicking at all, greeted at the stoop day after day by front pages declaring the reforms an act of electoral rage baiting and a tax ambush that ensnares families in a death tax dilemma. The meme lords of the internet also having a say.
An AI online onslaught depicting Anthony Albanese as an effective partner in small businesses, claiming he'll grab 47% of the capital gains when they sell.
A clever campaign that began 6 days earlier. Entrepreneurs Frank Grief and Julian Fayad, a former candidate for Clive Palmer's party, turning AI albos into unwanted business partners.
After 5.5 years as a solo founder, blood, sweat and tears, I now have a new co-founder.
Share your favourite picks with your new co-founder, who's gotten 47% equity of your business.
The meme then hot forged and churned through the presses. But is that 47% claim accurate? Yes, but only if you're being taxed at the highest rate when you sell your business, which Grief happily conceded.
Most businesses won't face a 47% tax.
Unfortunately, the more nuance you have, the quicker someone will scroll past and not really care about what you're saying.
That dreaded nuance. So how bad is the budget? It's so bad, people are fleeing the country.
2 days after the budget dropped, tech startup founder Jana Lanwin was at her local post office applying for an Irish passport. The capital gains tax changes were the final straw.
Tech entrepreneurs Jana and Trent Lanwin told the AFR last week that thanks to the budget, their European backup plan
has become an immediate exit strategy. She says the family will move to an EU country with more favourable conditions.
Except Jana Lanwin, after a call from us to check the Finn story, posted a little clarification on her LinkedIn page. The couple weren't fleeing, just disembarking in an orderly fashion in the medium term. Elsewhere in the coverage, people weren't fleeing to Ireland, but to China.
Chinese Australian residents in one of the country's most marginal seats are considering returning to their homeland amid the federal government's controversial tax policy changes. Bennelong has been held by Labor since 2022.
Yes, after Jim Chalmers' clanger budget, those in Bennelong now prefer Beijing. Evidence of the stampede, one Samson Lee, who runs a vitamins shop in the suburb of Epping.
China provides a better life than Australia right now, so I was thinking of going back.
Only Epping isn't in the seat of Bennelong, it's next door in Berowra. And I called Samson just to triple check it really was that awful budget that has him planning his return to China.
No, it's not just the budget, that's just a small thing. The bigger part is the infrastructure and our cost of living. That's the main thing.
But he is planning to move back, yes?
It's 80% likely. I have to let my daughter finish school first.
And how old is Samson's daughter?
She's 9 years old.
So no moving to China until she finishes year 12?
Yes, or until she finishes university.
For the benefit of the Telegraph, 2037, assuming she doesn't do a master's. Though the Telegraph did have another important voice in its Bennelong bombshell.
Bennelong business leader Philip Wang said the government's tax changes would continue to drive capital and innovation out of the country.
I called the businessman last week to ask how it was that the Telegraph found him.
I got a phone call from a friend in the Liberal Party. They asked around to see who's willing to take that call.
Yes, the Bennelong business leader is a paid-up member of the Liberal Party. Now, who could blame indignant business owners for bellyaching about Labor's reforms? And who could blame the press for gorging on their outrage? But perhaps we might advise a little portion control, not least to prevent the later heartburn. And now to the gifted surgeon effectively prohibited from operating in Australia.
I am not allowed to recommend an operation while I'm in Australia seeing an Australian patient, even if I think that that's going to save their life.
Enjoying some reputation rehab in 2026 is Charlie Teo, the Australian neurosurgeon propelled to celebrity thanks to his skill, his top-shelf contacts in the media and his impatience with the caution of his colleagues.
A good surgeon not only has manual dexterity, good intellect, he also has courage. Grow some balls.
Teo, who without question has performed some remarkable operations, has also had his operating licence restricted for the past 5 years by a medical establishment he claims is motivated by professional jealousy.
That's got nothing to do with patient care. It's got everything to do with being jealous of someone or wanting to take someone down because they're just, they're bucking the system.
And no one, with the exception perhaps of Teo himself, has better championed his cause than News Corp, which just this year has published 6 news.com.au articles, all of which have the flavour of barracking for the surgeon to be allowed to operate in Australia. So why is it that Charlie Teo is stuck practising neurosurgery overseas? Wind the clock back to 2021, when serious complaints prompted the regulator to place the first restrictions on Teo's licence, before the following year, 60 Minutes came out with this.
Dr. Teo's futile and costly operation catastrophically damaged the once happy, playful boy.
He spoiled our last 13 months. After the operation, he was in a bed. He cannot play. He can just blink his eyes and say yes or no to us.
In 2023, a Professional Standards Committee inquiry heard evidence Teo had pressured patients into high-risk surgery.
Dr. Teo said words to the effect,
I'm not going to bullshit anything. If you don't have this operation by Tuesday, you'll be fucking dead by Friday.
One, having viewed videos of him on YouTube and believing Teo a god, suffered a catastrophic outcome under his knife, never regaining consciousness following a procedure few would have performed and which one surgeon said was irresponsible. In a second case, a mother of 3 with terminal cancer undertook her risky surgery the day after her initial consultation, under pressure because Teo was due to travel to India. An expert witness later pointing out that it was wrong to ask patients to make life-threatening decisions without a cooling-off period. The patient never regained consciousness and died 5.5 months later, Teo admitting he'd botched the surgery.
I went too far and I've damaged this lady. I'm not disputing that.
The inquiry finding he should never have conducted the surgery in the first place. In July 2023, it found the neurosurgeon guilty of unsatisfactory professional conduct.
Among the findings against him, he lacked insight, empathy and judgment and failed to properly explain the risks of the operations.
As a result, Teo can no longer perform certain specific brain operations in Australia without the sign-off of a second experienced neurosurgeon. He also has to obtain hard proof of patient consent, which still is proving all too much for the star surgeon, as news.com.au revealed.
I can tell you now my record keeping was abysmal. It's improved, but it's still not good. I've tried to maintain videos of consent processes and interviews with patients, but
and which he now claims may see him struck off altogether.
Sadly, I think this might be the final nail in the coffin.
This year's flurry of news.com.au articles, which only sometimes explained why Teo's licence is restricted, were written by Chief Reporter Sidoni Marden, who also voiced this video.
Dr. Teo says that stripping him of his licence will have dire implications for Australia's healthcare system.
Sidoni Marden was herself one of Charlie Teo's patients, an important fact sometimes disclosed by her publisher, but sometimes not. and who, since investigations into the surgeon began, has written some 30 articles about Teo, including this enormous 2024 special in the Sunday Telegraph, which are overwhelmingly supportive of the doctor. On Saturday, and prompted by our questions, Sidonie Marden published an impassioned defence of her reporting on Charlie Teo, expressing once more her gratitude to the surgeon.
I am grateful that I'm still here to tell my story, but more importantly relay without favour the stories of others. That's something I will continue to do until they don't need me to.
Also boosting Teo's campaign to have his full operating privileges restored, a Channel 9 anchor with a Plan B podcast.
I don't know that if the punishment fits the crime, though.
I don't mind people calling me a show-off and an arsehole and all that kind of stuff, but let me operate.
Like News Corp's writer, Karl Stefanovic also has a conflict of interest. He's an official ambassador for the Charlie Teo Foundation and...
I've been friends with you for years.
Which played no part, I am sure, in why he treated the reasons for the surgeon's unsatisfactory conduct findings like this.
How did you get through?
What? The
dramas. I'm not diving too much into that. It is what it is. It's there for people to, to have a look at.
Such treatment difficult to swallow for some, including the widower of one woman featured in the inquiry.
They're not reporting the bad cases. I think they are falsely representing the risk, putting out information which is going to affect people's decision. It's worrying and may encourage some very vulnerable and desperate people to make an uninformed decision.
The head of news.com.au told us his chief reporter has acknowledged on dozens of occasions that she was once Teo's patient and has repeatedly reported the adverse findings made against the surgeon. He also said...
We unreservedly stand by Sidonie Marden's reporting on Charlie Teo. She has always covered this case with integrity, based solely on its newsworthiness and public interest, and will continue to do so.
And as for Karl?
Charlie Teo is a great fucking Australian. Leave him the fuck alone.
Karl, it's not Teo we're worried about. They only apply to news.com.au and not to Stefanovic's podcast, but the Australian Press Council standards are a useful guide. They state conflicts of interest should be avoided or adequately disclosed and, critically, should not influence publications. And yet here, it seems obvious to us, these principles have at different times been compromised by a grateful former patient and an openly declared friend. Of course, Charlie Teo is entitled to fight his corner, his patients too, but that is not the media's job, not least because among their audience there'll be a small number who, confronting a terribly difficult medical decision, deserve only the most impartial of information. And now to the ABC's mini news for kids, with the scoop on their most favourite of topics, school.
More people than ever are going to private schools, and Australian parents are paying more than anyone in the world for their kids to get an education. So why? And where is this leaving our public schools?
This segment last Tuesday from the ABC's youth-focused Behind the News online spin-off called BTN High included a warning that...
We now have one of the most segregated education systems in the developed world, and that segregation is based along social class.
Jane Carrow, a long-standing advocate for public schools and director of the Public Education Foundation, was the only person formally interviewed in the 8-minute item, which had the private schools lobby choking on its Weet-Bix and firing off a letter to Auntie detailing
serious concerns about the story, the framing. It is not impartial journalism.
The letter, which quickly made its way to that great friend of the ABC, The Australian, had the broadcaster taking the extraordinary step of yanking the program. In fact, the Independent Schools Association had relayed these concerns before the segment aired, offering an interview never taken up by the program. The segment dominated instead by Carrow's criticisms like this.
Now, private school fees are in the top 5 causes of bankruptcy in Australia.
Not quite right. That graphic doesn't show the causes of bankruptcy, but the organisations which instigate bankruptcy proceedings.
BTN High has a higher obligation to ensure contested political arguments are not presented to young people as settled fact.
Late on Friday, the ABC published this correction, confirming the item would not reappear.
The story lacked contextual information and inaccurately stated that private school fees are in the top 5 causes of bankruptcy in Australia.
A show for schools, about schools, getting schooled by a school's lobby in an ironic and rather terrible error of judgment from a program meant to teach media literacy, instead serving up Exhibit A in what not to do. And that's all from us tonight. Be sure to check us out on ABC iView, as well as YouTube and Facebook. You can find full statements on our website. And don't forget to send us your tips. See you next week.